Hi all, welcome to the channel. So I know the first question that will cross your mind is, what is this channel about? You know, what is StoryArt? In short, this is a channel where I aim to couple the telling of stories I've written with paintings I've created. In long, StoryArt is an idea I had about 2 years ago, sometime around when I was doing the piece on the screen. My whole life I've been a writer, and since traditional publishing wasn't working, I was looking for other avenues to at least share my works. I was aware that indie sites existed, but I wanted to do something different. Painting was becoming another passion of mine, and while my skills had and have a long way to go, one night I thought it would be really cool if I could paint scenes from my stories while doing a voiceover of the chapter that the painting would represent. So I bought a little camera and started recording some of my paintings. I thought that I could either write a story about whatever I was painting or paint a scene depicting something I had already written. It seemed nice in theory. Of course, as time went on, I became overly concerned with creating a good sized backlog. I think it was 3 months I wanted at the time that I didn't actually end up starting because I was still trying to create this backlog. And then also in the process, I moved twice. Um, Life just got busy in general. I had a fairly large mental health crisis and then just never fully realized my goal. Then half a year ago, I asked myself why hadn't I started yet? What was my excuse this time? While I can't remember the exact reason, I think I was starting another story, or at least I was trying to finish a story that I had previously begun 6 years ago, but I had abandoned it for Afro fantasy. So this was kind of like me finishing what I had started. And when I write, I really write. So between that, painting, the gym, work, and a fairly taxing social life, I practically had no energy for trying to figure out how to edit a video and make some YouTube channel. But eventually, I finished that story after 6 grueling months, having created the longest book I've ever written. With that book out of the way, I finally decided to just do the darn thing. Still being me, I did still want to have a little bit of a backlog. I picked a story I thought was the least polarizing and drafted 4 paintings for 4 chapters. That was taking too long due to life, so I cut out the 4th chapter and decided 3 was enough. I put together the videos and threw them into the world. Of course, they didn't do that well. Shocker. I didn't have a mic until a week ago. So my voice is really soft, and couple that with the music, and you barely get audio in my audio-visual book. Not to mention that creating something from imagination is not very easy. Thankfully, I am a learn-by-doing sort of person. If I let an idea sit in my mind, it doesn't grow. I just kind of need to vomit it into existence to actually realize what I need to change or fix. And now, something that should have been obvious to me is that painting one scene per chapter would take forever and be a daunting task. I've since thought of some ways around this. For example, as my sketching skills improve, I can possibly do concept art for characters and things in the story where there's nothing too grand to depict, rather than me trying to paint a whole scene. And now that I have a mic, I think maybe I won't add music to the background of the audio. I listened to quite a few audiobooks, but when I was editing my videos initially, I, funnily enough, wasn't listening to any. So now that I'm back to reading books, like The Library of Mount Shar right now, I realize that there's no music while the narrator reads. Another thing I was debating was to do voices or to read the stories plain, and that one I'm still not quite sure about. I might try both and just see which one sticks. Regardless, the videos I've already created have given me good ways to improve. This channel began as an experiment, and I would say still sort of is. because that's just how I operate. But from this point on, I think the channel more or less officially begins. Who am I? So, now that you know what this channel is, you may be wondering who I am to even want to start such a thing. I am a writer, and a painter, and a hobby musician. I've written 10 novels in around 10 years, about 5 good ones, I think. I taught myself to paint and have been doing so for 3.5 years now, and I've worked a variety of jobs trying to keep my head afloat. Some years doing better, and some, like now, doing worse. I started writing when I was in college. I think at the time I mostly didn't dream about being a writer or anything. I just sort of enjoyed coming up with stories in my head. But there was something in the back of my mind that always knew what I wanted to do. It was my second year of college, and I was like, fuck it. So I took a creative writing class, and one of my assignments was to write a short story. I wrote about this very vivid dream I had in high school and received a lot of praise for it. That inspired me to maybe give writing a novel a try. That wasn't as easy as it sounded, if it sounded easy. To me, I only wrote essays that were max 5 pages. All of a sudden, I wanted to try and write an entire book. That sounded like insanity to me. I didn't think there were enough words in my head to fill an entire book, but I decided to write and see how far I could get. At the end of the year, I wrote about 350 pages. I finished about a week before my senior capstone project was due, and I remember feeling uninspired in my schoolwork because I felt writing that book was my real biggest accomplishment and meant so much more to me than studying pre-law. After that point, my heart was set on writing. I didn't fully give up on the idea of law school at first, as I took the LSAT and applied for some schools, but ultimately I knew it wasn't for me. The expensive price tag also helped in that decision. And I was fairly young at the time, 21, so I thought that I would be a published author in like a few years. Oh boy, did life make me its fool. I played the publishing game for a few years. I wrote about 1.5 books each year and then edited them and then queried agents to no luck. I went through the, is it me, my writing, or are they just not seeing what I have to offer or whatever? That is it me or them phase. At that time, I think it was me. I started going to writing groups but never finding fellow fantasy writers, and a lot of the people there just mostly didn't click because they seemed like they were just needed space to write an essay or a little children's book, or maybe they just wanted to hang out, and it didn't seem like they were taking it as seriously as like a career path like I was. But I did still make some friends there, and I did still find a way to just kind of have that nice time for me to write something. But then COVID happened. I got the idea to try and write Afro fantasy at that time, when there was a supposed desire for authors of color, so long as they wrote about something colorful. I would say my writing was actually decent. I was reading The Wheel of Time for the first time, and I had this idea to create a Jordan-inspired world, as in a world rich in culture and history, except for my world, it was based purely off of African mythology, culture, and history. My writing came out very Jordan-esque with a lot of descriptions about the world and characters' thoughts. From that story, I created what was supposed to be a sort of side story, a supplemental story that just somehow became its own fully realized novel. I think I had like a trilogy planned for that because it just became so much more than what I initially intended to be. That book, that second book, was the closest I ever came to being published, as I managed to get a couple bites from agents, making it through the initial round of just a blanket query. And it didn't go the distance though. So at that point, I was feeling very discouraged, and that's when I gave up on publishing, traditional publishing. I was very confident in that story, and then after 6 years, I was still living with my mom. I was like, I just need to do other things in life. I moved out and focused on other areas in my life that I just maybe had been neglecting. And I made a bunch of friends, bounced around nightlife, and I was very happy at that point in my life. And while I was struggling financially to survive, working a 9 to 5, a restaurant gig, and Ubering all at the same time, somehow I still barely made enough to afford my cheap studio apartment. And in case you're wondering, I live in California, so it's crazy out here. But I had such a wide variety of experiences that I don't think I'll be topping them anytime soon, so it was really worth it for me. I did wonder, though, what I was going to do with my life. It seemed like I could no longer get that spark I used to get when a full story idea came to mind. And if I wasn't going to be a writer, then I was basically always going to be working minimum wage. Because you can't actually do that much with a pre-law, or at least I haven't found any way to make too much money off of it that would support me financially. So yeah, I never really answered that question, but what I did discover on a whim was how to paint. One of my new friends threw on her Instagram a picture of her and her roommate's dog with a caption of, "Someone paint them." I thought, why not? I had some acrylic paints from my sister and figured it would be something fun to try out. And I came out with this. Not great, but it was enough to get me interested in doing more. And from knowing the pug in that picture, I grew a love of dogs, especially pugs. And combining that with my burgeoning interest in art history, uh, I've created some fun works, more recently. And then somehow, in this process, I found my way back to a new story idea. Art truly creates art. So now I'm here, nearly 4 years later from that starting point, and I just have no shortage of book ideas now. But I don't want to get into the loop of constantly creating and never doing, because I swear when you just make something, edit it, throw it into the publishing ring, try to get published, you go for months and months, waiting weeks and weeks and maybe even months for a reply just to say no, and then doing it again, and then after you've exhausted like countless amount of agents, you do it again with a new story, and it's just an endless loop, and it's exhausting. So I don't want to keep doing that, but I definitely want to keep writing stories. So I decided to finally just try this venture. If you listen to this much, I appreciate you and assume you have perhaps a bit of an interest in my vision. So for the future of this channel, there are quite a few things I wish to do. I've always wanted to lift up other struggling writers if I ever had the opportunity. If this channel ever makes it to a significant number of followers, I would love to read other people's stories. Or they could read those stories as well, and I would just do a painting for that story. I also would someday like to hire voice actors to read so I can get different voices, and they'd probably do a better job than me. So I would have an interest in that because I want to use as little AI as possible. And for me, that means none. But, maybe there might come instances where I just really need something to help me along the way. We'll see. I also know that not everything will be about my writing. I've grown a deep love for art history, so I might want to explain the stories behind some artworks that have either inspired me or just some I've taken a great interest in. And of course, I'm also a nerd, as you can tell probably by some of the clips playing, and I do fan art and would probably want to talk about why I like whatever it is I'm painting. So basically, I want to give the stories behind art, or make art from stories. StoryArt. So in the coming weeks, I plan to release one of my favorite stories that I wrote, Reapers 13. It's on the grim dark side. So I hope, if you listen to it, I hope you like it. If not, I've got more. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.